That's Slashtastic.
Hey everybody, this is Waka from Looking for Epic, and on this show I'm going to watch old classic slasher movies. I consider myself a big movie fan, big horror fan, big fan of the 80s, and when you put all those things together in one of those Venn diagrams right in the middle, you get slasher films. But by the time I was a teenager, slasher films had pretty much run their course. You just had like the Scream movies, which sucked. So I'm going to go back and watch a lot of the classic slasher movies that I've never actually seen. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm pretty excited. It should be fun. I got my slasher hat. Yeah, because you can't watch slasher movies without a hat, right? Okay, we're going to start off with the original slasher movie, Halloween. So the movie starts out with some cool music and a creepy jack-o'-lantern. Sort of leaves you with the feeling that it's not going to be able to top this opening. This movie has an actress named Nancy Loomis and a character named Dr. Loomis. John Carpenter. I'm a big fan of John Carpenter, Big Trouble in Little China, one of my favorite films, but he does a lot of bad stuff, so you never exactly know what you're going to get with him. You might get something really cool, you might get something really stupid. It's kind of a weird, apprehensive feeling you get going into a John Carpenter movie, like if you see a title card that says, co-directed by Quentin Tarantino and Uwe Boll. The movie begins by ripping off the opening scene from Blowout, and it's just as slow and just as devoid of suspense as it was in that movie. The first thing we see in this film is a 7-year-old boy who dresses up as a clown, watches his naked teenage sister brush her hair, and then murders her with a butcher knife. That's nice, because that's not weird or creepy at all. And how awkward must this be for the family in the future? I mean, of course they try and forget about it, but every time they get together for Thanksgiving or whatever, there's going to be some drunk uncle who has to bring up, oh, the time Michael dressed up as a clown and murdered his sister. Ugh. And we skip ahead to 15 years later when Donald Pleasance and Nurse Red Riding Hood McNaughty Pants arrive to lend the movie some much-needed respectability. But Donald discovers a bunch of inmates have escaped his mental institution and are wandering around looking like zombies, which would probably make a way cooler horror film than the one we're watching right now. I guess that was Michael Myers escaping without pants. So the first thing you'll notice about this movie is that it is very, very slow, and that acts as sort of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it does help build suspense and mood, but it is also boring as fuck. A common problem in old movies, especially movies from the goddamn 70s. Jamie Lee Curtis has a 7-year-old boyfriend, apparently. No wonder Michael Myers is going after her. She reminds him of his own creepy relationship with his sister. Michael spots Jamie as she drops off a key at his old house, and that's really the only reason the movie gives us as for why he targets her and her friends. I always thought that Jamie Lee Curtis was Michael Myers' sister. I think the reason I thought that was because I think she says that in the commercial for Halloween H2O, which is as close to watching a Halloween movie as I've ever come. Either that was retconned, which tends to annoy me, or I misremembered it. But since I've never misremembered a commercial, I'm just going to assume that this movie is pissing me off. So the Donald is angry that they won't close the beaches, and Harry Reams here continues to refuse his requests, because he doesn't want to have that little Kuttner boy spill out all over the dock. Next, we get to watch Jamie Lee Curtis sit in class, where the teacher is talking about fate. She's probably trying to tie this into the movie somehow, but mostly this makes me think of the game Persona 3, and how, much like in that game, watching people sit in a classroom doesn't really entertain me. It makes me remember what it's like to sit in a classroom, which is not entertaining. In fact, it's about as far from entertaining as you can get without sending killer bees after me.
Don't you know what happens on Halloween?
Sure, I know exactly what happens on Halloween. First, you get the paranoid lecture about razor blades and apples, even though no one has given out apples on Halloween since 1983. Then you have to dress up and go trick-or-treating because even though you're 15 and hate dressing up, your little sister wants to go as a fairy princess and you have to go with her. So then you spend the entire night missing the cool horror movies you saw advertised for the last month and a half because you're out with a bunch of grade schoolers getting a bag full of candy that will ultimately make you sick because it all tastes really, really crappy. You go home and eat it even though you know you don't like it because you're bitter, and then you have horrifying nightmares. So far, Michael Myers is a very reserved serial killer. He doesn't have any trouble with these kids. It's possible he only hates teenage girls. Maybe he's actually really sweet with other people. I mean, for all we know, Michael might make a really fun math teacher or something. You just gotta take the girls out of this class before they grow boobs. We now enter into a period of the movie in which we have to listen to high school girls talk about boys for the next 35 to 40 minutes. I think listening to high school girls talk about boys is one of the levels of hell described in Dante's Inferno. I'm pretty sure it's where they sent Brutus. Jamie Lee Curtis is being stalked by a car, and she finds the car very suspicious. Probably because every time it shows up, the Halloween music starts playing. Yeah, that would creep me out too.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Although this movie is yet to have one. If she's being stalked, why wouldn't she just tell somebody? Is it because stalkers hadn't been invented in the 70s? At least she does have the excuse that she's never seen a slasher movie before, because this is the first slasher movie. So she's probably not nearly as paranoid about people stalking her as most teenage girls would have been in the 80s. So Jamie Lee changes out of her knee-high socks into bell-bottoms, a sweater, and a shirt with a spiked collar, so that along with her long, completely unkempt hair, she now looks exactly like every other human being of either gender who ever appeared in a movie in the 70s.
Yeah, you know, every town has something like this happen.
Yeah, every town has a 6-year-old boy in a clown suit who murders his sister with a knife. That's one of those mathematical probability things. Sociologists write papers about it. Up to now, the best part of the movie has been Blue Oyster Cult on the soundtrack, but we don't really get to hear the song because these girls keep talking over it. It really makes me hope that Michael Myers pops out right now and just rips off his mask, and underneath it, he's Christopher Walken. And he goes, "I've got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell," and then he kills everyone. I didn't see Christopher Walken's name in the credits, but I've seen him pop up in the middle of enough movies unexpectedly to figure that it's always a possibility. We then meet the town sheriff, who's in the process of blaming a break-in at the hardware store on some kids. His daughter, who's friends with Jamie Lee Curtis, chastises him for blaming everything on kids. Now obviously we as the audience know that Michael Myers broke into the hardware store, but really, this town is pretty small. In the last 15 years they probably haven't had that many serious crimes, and the most notable one was a little kid killing his sister with a knife. So kids seem to cause a lot of trouble in these parts. I think it's actually wise of the sheriff to be suspicious of them. 98% of this movie is watching people stare at Michael Myers or watching Michael Myers stare at people. The sheriff and the Donald find a dead dog, which Michael killed and apparently ate. That is sort of creepy, but if I was writing this, I'd have him fuck the dog. Lots of people eat dogs, it's not that weird, but fucking a dog, that's some horror. Donald launches into a speech stolen right out from under Quint's sweaty hat and Jaws.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes.
And the sheriff reacts as if he wasn't even listening, like card tricks for a dog. Then the movie insults comic books. Yeah, 'cause that really makes me want this girl not to die. Look, movie, just try and scare me and leave off with insulting my hobbies. And here's a pro tip for you. If you want to look down on other people and not seem like a hypocrite, stop being in the 70s. Holy shit, I think Michael Myers is actually having sex with that dog. I take credit for that idea, by the way. We then get to watch them watch another movie on TV, and it's The Thing. Now, of course, there is the old rule, never show a better movie in the middle of your crappy movie. Normally, that wouldn't apply to The Thing because that's not such a great movie. But, ironically, a few years after this, John Carpenter remade The Thing, and his version of it is actually really good. I would say a lot better than this movie. So, in a weird sort of way, when he remade The Thing, he broke the rule retroactively in one of his older movies by making The Thing a better movie than Halloween. And then, as if listening to girls talk about boys wasn't boring enough, we get to listen to one talk to a boy. She gets pissed at him for always talking about sex. Then she asks him to come over so they can have sex. That makes a lot of sense. This girl is finally killed, 53 minutes into the movie, I might add. But even in death, she still manages to be annoying. She falls on the car horn, and then it just beeps indefinitely throughout the rest of the scene. It's as if with her final moment in the world, she wanted to make sure that even in death, she was still irritating somebody. Then we get this weird scene where the Donald scares some kids, and then he smiles about it all creepily to himself. Have we considered the possibility that the reason Michael Myers didn't get any better during all his years in mental therapy is that this was his psychiatrist? Also, at this point in the movie, the Donald and the sheriff feel like they're talking about a completely different psycho killer. Some crazy monster is going to kill hundreds of people. Michael Myers has only killed one person, a teenage girl. I mean, teenage girls are basically like a renewable resource in these movies anyway. Who even cares if he kills one of them? Mostly though, this film just makes me think that if I'm ever saddled with children, I should never ever hire teenage girls to babysit them. They eat all your food, run up crazy ass phone bills, and they have sex on your bed. As if that wasn't bad enough, they draw serial killers like a floodlight draws moths.
Come on now.
Thank God. I'm starting to see some of the appeal of these movies, because every time one of these annoying kids is killed, I experience this weird rush of joy. I'm not sure if that makes me an evil person, but it probably does. I'm also surprised to learn that for a guy famous the world over for killing people with a giant knife, Michael does a lot of choking. This is probably my favorite scene, because it really makes Michael feel like he's not crazy at all. He's just a quiet man driven to extreme acts by those around him. Because be honest with yourself, how long could you tolerate this girl before you stabbed her to death?
Well, did you get my beer? What's the matter? Can I get your ghost, Bob? All right, come on, where's my beer?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Before you strangled her to death. Michael Myers only stabs people after they're already dead. Are you kidding me? He's been standing in front of that house for half the movie, and now he just suddenly notices that the car Michael stole from him is sitting 50 feet away? My God, that is retarded. And at the same time as Donald suddenly notices the car, Jamie Lee suddenly gets a weird feeling, like something isn't right. You would think if anything was going to make her feel like something wasn't right, it'd be listening to her friend strangled to death over the telephone. But no, that didn't set off any alarms. It's just sort of a vague wigginess that sets in for no apparent reason. This is probably the first indication we get that Michael might be a little off in the head. I mean, he killed his sister, I know. But he was a little kid, and it's a well-established fact that kids say and do the darndest things. Okay, he tried to escape from a mental institution, but that makes him seem sane. In the movies I've seen about mental institutions, there's always some sane person there trying to escape. Maybe Michael Myers was that guy. And, okay, he fucks dogs. That's certainly unusual, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's dangerous. The only people he's actually killed were some teenagers, and to be fair, they were very annoying. But this, with the tombstone, I don't exactly see a normal person doing this. At this point, we also learn why it is that Michael Myers has strangled everyone up till now. Because he is fucking terrible at killing people with his knife. Oh man, look how badass this guy is. He's not a zombie or a mummy. He doesn't walk slow because he has to. He just literally doesn't give a shit. He could kill her right now, or maybe he'll kill her after he has a snack. It's a foregone conclusion she's gonna die. No reason to rush it. Regardless, he seriously needs to practice with that knife. Even in the first scene, when he was stabbing his sister, you could tell that he was missing her and throwing paint, and she just died to humor him. You know, the way you do with a little kid sometimes. Choking is clearly what Michael does best, and he really ought to stick with that. And as for Jamie Lee Curtis, how stupid would you have to be to think you could kill someone with a knitting needle? I mean, sure, that might kill them eventually, but it isn't like you shot them in the face. It's a knitting needle, not the master sword. Luckily though, she was smart enough to leave the knife downstairs, because as long as he's got his knife, Michael Myers is totally useless. He can't even open these closet doors. I mean, has anyone ever seen closet doors with a lock on the inside? Dude, seriously, just throw the knife away. It's obvious that knives are your kryptonite. So after again sort of killing him, Jamie Lee decides that she'll send the kids away to safety, but that she'll not only stay in the house, but sit with her back to Michael Myers and just sort of wait for him to wake up. I mean, look at this. She actually looks bored. It's like she knows he's coming, and she's just killing time, going through her shopping list in her head until he gets there. Finally, he's back to what he does best, choking bitches out. But then, just when the movie seems like it's going well, this crazy bald man rushes into the house and just starts shooting people. What is he, some kind of escaped mental patient? I mean, this movie is terrifying. Oh, he got away? Gee, I didn't see that coming. The movie ends with a bunch of second unit footage while the DP breathes into his slushie next to the microphone. There's a listing in the cast for stunt Jim Winburn, so this either means that there was only one stunt performed in this movie and it got its own credit, or that there was a character in this movie named Stunt and Jim Winburn played him. And that's the original Halloween, and I have to say, it's not bad. It hasn't aged real well, which is to be expected with horror films. It's not that scary anymore, and it does seem very boring. But you can see why this was a popular and frightening movie when it came out in 1978. And, you know, it's watchable. It's not bad or anything. You can still sort of enjoy it. I would say that in John Carpenter's very eclectic filmography, this is one of the positive entries. Anyway, I'm Waka, and I hope you enjoyed Slashtastic. I'll be waiting on the moon.